Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. How have you guys been? Tell me in the comments what you guys have been thinking about this series so far. So we're reading this book and we are applying the knowledge of how to win friends and influence people towards our relationships, not necessarily to romantic relationships, but just friendships, family members, interpersonal relationships amongst each other. And by the way, this over here, you're like, what is that? Oh, this is my little vision board, my little ghetto vision board. So yeah, that's my water bottle. Yeah, let me show you just in case you guys want to see. It's about me living my best life, getting massages, having my hair done, nails done, books to read, having fun with my friends, and increasing my YouTube channel and money. Okay, now where did we leave off in this book, right? So we're going to be reading from chapter 5 to chapter 12 this time to finish part 3. So my cat came over to join us. And she's nesting with us. Don't bite it. Don't bite it. Be a good kitty. Yeah? She's so cute. Anyways, if you hear purring, oh yeah, don't bite it. If you hear purring, it's just my cat, okay? She's very clingy right now, so yeah, she's here with us. I'm sorry if you guys hear me loudly. I had to move the mic up because my cat wanted to play. So, getting back to the book, chapter 5, right? He names chapter 5 The Secret of Socrates, okay? And I have a slight problem with this because he says that Socrates was basically teaching his followers to believe whatever it is he was preaching, to say yes, yes, to get yes, yes out of the audience. But he's really dumbing it down. Socrates didn't do that. Like, any slight basic research of Socrates and you learn that that's not what he did at all. I find that a little bit disrespectful because Socrates gave us an interesting way to look at the world. And I'm sure there were probably like other people that might have had this idea, but at least he's the one that's down in the history books, And he basically taught his students critical thinking skills. How did he do that? He made them question themselves, question how they think, why it is that they think that way. Is it logical? What are the contradictions in the thought patterns, right? One of the ways he would do this is, let's use this example, right? Somebody says, apples are red, like all apples are red or whatever. Basically, he would say, hey, have you ever found an apple that's not red? If the answer was yes, then clearly that statement is false because there's a contradiction. You know what I mean? Yeah, and that sort of thinking is used nowadays in law schools to get students to think critically. So he was not this master manipulator, this master arguer. He wasn't trying to get people to believe whatever it was that he believed in. He was teaching people critical thinking skills, okay? And that's why he was, That's my little opinion from the very beginning of the book. It's called The Secret of Socrates, but I'm going to say The Secret of Dale Carnegie because that was not the secret of Socrates. That is a lie. I'm sorry, but I respect Socrates. That is a lie. Okay? So starting out chapter 5, The Secret of Dale Carnegie. He starts off the first paragraph by explaining that when you talk to people, you have to talk to them in a way that emphasizes that you're both human beings and you probably have the same goal. Your methods might differ from each other, but basically you're striving towards the same thing, look at your similarities, etc. And always try to get the other person to say yes to whatever it is you're saying. Okay, let me explain that more deeply. Okay, Dale goes on to explain the reason why you should get the other person's approval quite a few times when you're talking to them before asking them a question that you want them to say yes to. So, for example, you would agree that, let's use the same example I used. Not all apples are red, yes? And that's like a known thing, okay? Not all apples are red. So let's expand on that. You would say all apples come from trees. And then you would continue asking that to get a yes response. The reason for that, he says, is whenever it is you want to ask a question, okay, it's better to get a yes. That way the person is psychologically like relaxed and prepared to keep saying yes. Because if you get a no response, the person is a little bit shut down. The yes response says, set a psychological process of the listeners moving into that affirmative direction, okay? It is like when you get a ball rolling, like inertia. Like you get it rolling and it's gonna keep rolling, and it's gonna take more effort to stop it or change the direction of it because it's already in that motion. And I want us to read this part together because I really like it. When a person says no, he or she is doing far more than saying two letters. The entire organism, glandular, nervous, muscular, gathers itself together into a condition of rejection. There is usually, in a minute, but sometimes in observable degree, a physical withdrawal or readiness for withdrawal. Now you may be asking yourself, why are we going over this? What is the importance of this? That's if you want to convince somebody of your beliefs, of your way of thinking. You want to give them a question, but they have the probability of saying yes or no. So you're going to try to get them to say yes at least 2 times. One thing that I really enjoy is at the very end of the chapter, he goes on and he praises a little bit of Chinese culture. He says, okay, they have spent 5,000 years studying human nature. Those cultures Chinese, and they have garnered a lot of perspective. And he ends it with saying, he who treads softly goes far, which is a Chinese proverb. And the reason I like it is because this book was written in the 1930s. Okay, that was a pretty radical thing. Oh, I don't know, because people were pretty racist back then. You know what I mean? So the fact that he saw the beauty in this culture, pretty good. Gotta give him props for that. Chapter 6. Chapter 6, the title is Safety Valve in Handling Complaints. What do you do if someone is complaining to you about yourself or something, in general? When we allow the other person to do the talking, they feel good being heard. Because what that does, allowing the person to do the talking, it makes them feel valued and heard. And you're both putting yourself in a cooperative position. And on the topic of allowing the other person to do the talking, not just with complaints, but in general, he gives this quote from a French philosopher named Rochefoucauld. If I butchered that name, I'm sorry. But it's funny, it reminds me of La Roche-Posay, the brand, I had to. Anyways, he says, if you want enemies, excel your friends. But if you want friends, let them excel you. Why is that true? Because they feel important. When we excel our friends, they, or at least some of them, will feel inferior and envious. Okay, on to chapter 7. How to get cooperation, aka teamwork, from your loved ones or your people, whatever. It says, don't you have much more faith in the ideas that you discover for yourself than in the ideas that are handed to you on a silver platter? If so, isn't it bad judgment to try to ram your opinions down the throats of other people? Isn't it wiser to make suggestions and let the other person think out their conclusion? Think about that. And he goes on to explaining a situation at a job where a boss was dealing with workers that were not very motivated to work, not excited, not doing their best. So what did he do? He set up a meeting and he asked the workers, what do you guys expect from me? What do you need from me? And he wrote those things down on a chalkboard. Then he asked them what he can expect from them. And they were like loyalty, honesty, etc. They filled the list. And at the end of the day, what happened is that the workers were much more motivated to fulfill their responsibilities because they felt like they were valued, like their opinions mattered. And they knew exactly what they could expect from him. And he knew what to expect from them. Now, this is a working situation, like a situation at work. But you can easily apply this to your romantic relationships, your child and parent relationships. You can use this for your friendships as well. It can help improve whatever dynamic you guys have. That maybe one person feels a little bit like, I feel like you can apply this to any situation and it could help both parties feel valued and heard. And he says, consulting them about their wishes and desires was just what they needed. We much prefer to feel that we are buying our own accord or acting on our own ideas. We like to be consulted about our wishes, our wants, and our thoughts. In personal relationships, this would be helping one another. I wrote this down. Helping one another and makes the other person feel valued and important. That's my take on basically what I read in the chapter. And I love how he values Chinese culture. He's saying how he really appreciates Lao Tse. He calls it a Chinese sage. No, he was a philosopher. Who is Lao Tse? Lao Tse created the Tao Te Ching, which is like the foundational text for Taoism. It's a philosophy. He's similar to the Buddha, except he's from China. They do have slightly different beliefs though. But he's like the sage, like the Buddha, you know what I mean? And he quotes Lao Tse by saying, the reason why rivers and seas receive the homage of 100 mountain streams is that they keep below them. Thus, they are able to reign over all the mountain streams. Okay, so the sage, wishing to be above men, puts himself below them. Wishing to be before them, he puts himself beneath them. Thus, though his place is above men, they do not feel his weight. Though his place is before them, they do not count it an injury. Think about that. I like that. I love philosophy. So I'm just so happy he included that. Now on to chapter 8. Chapter 8, the title is A Formula That Will Work Wonders for You. Okay, it starts off by saying, remember that other people may be totally wrong, but they don't think so. Don't condemn them. Any fool can do that. Oh, I hate it when he uses that word, and you'll see why. Try to understand them. Only wise, tolerant, exceptional people try to do that, which is valid. He goes on to explain that there's a reason why the other person thinks and acts the way that they do. And try to find that reason. Then you will have the key to his actions and perhaps to his personality. Very wise, okay? Success in dealing with people depends on the sympathetic grasp of the other person's viewpoint. Cooperativeness in conversations is achieved when you consider the other person's ideas and feelings as important as your own. And seeing things from the other person's point of view, their perspective, can help ease tensions. And it's funny, but he ends the chapter by saying, if you get only one thing from this book, try to see things from the other person's point of view. One thing out of the whole book, that. A book on how to deal with relationships, friendships, co-workers, acquaintances, with human beings amongst each other is that. To honestly try to see things from the other person's point of view. So he's emphasizing that. Chapter 9, I'm going to put it in my own words. Chapter 9 is basically about everybody wants sympathy, okay? And I find this part of the book so funny. So I'm going to read it to you. The people who come to you irritated, bigoted, unreasoning, deserve very little discredit for being what they are. And he's basically saying in this book, like think about them, sympathize with them. If you were under their circumstances, you probably would behave the same way. Like the way they were brought up, their understanding of the world, whatever it is, they're human beings just like you and I, and they want sympathy. He's so funny because he'll randomly come up with stats, because I don't know where he's pulling this information from. He'll say, I have a love and hate relationship with this book, because some of the things are just like, and I'm gonna get to it in the chapter, but you know, you can always see the bright side of things, which is this book is helpful in some ways. He says here, 3/4 of people you will ever meet are hungry and thirsting for sympathy. Like, I get it. There's a big portion of people who are thirsting for sympathy. But 3/4 of the... Where are you getting these stats from? I get it. It's the 1930s. But, oh my God. I don't know if you guys remember earlier when I brought up the word fool. And I was like, I don't like it when he uses this word. It's because he's used it quite a few times throughout the book. And whenever he does it, like, my spidey senses go off. And in this part of the book, it confirmed my suspicions, okay? I'm going to read it. He's talking about, he was a fan of this woman's works. And he messaged her asking what it was like wherever she grew up from. And he said the wrong place. And the woman was like, oh my God, how dare you say this place is here, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh my goodness, this woman, I'm glad I'm not married to her. And he was going to write to her back. And he decided not to. And I'm going to explain his reasoning. I don't like his reasoning. Then I was going to roll up my sleeves and tell her what I really thought. But I didn't. I controlled myself. I realized that any hot-headed fool could do that. And that most fools would do just that. I wanted to be above the fools. So when I read that, I immediately thought pride. He just wanted to be perceived as not being a fool, and it wasn't coming out of genuineness. And a lot of times in the book, he talks about genuinely being this, genuinely being that. And it's giving presumptuous. So then he goes on a call, right? Like a radio call or whatever. And he's talking to her on the phone with such and such. He was like, oh, I received a letter from you. And I messed up the other day. Accidentally made the stupid mistake of saying the wrong place. And I wanted to apologize for it. It was so nice of you to take the time to write to me. And it felt a little bit like, is he mocking her? Because you could just say like, hey, I'm sorry I made this mistake. I didn't realize it. But he keeps on going. And then she says, oh, I'm sorry that I wrote to you as I did. I lost my temper. I must apologize. And he's like, no. You are not the one to apologize. I am. Any school child would have known better than I to have said what I said. I apologize over the air the following Sunday. I want to apologize to you personally now. And then she went on to explain a little bit more about her situation, etc., and that she was ashamed of the letter. And then he goes on to say, I assure to you that you were not one sense as distressed as I am. My error didn't hurt this and that. It hurt me. And I did not mean to insult your culture and the time it took for you to write to me, etc. Like, it felt a little bit dramatic. It felt a little bit passive aggressive reading this. Because ain't no way that you were that distressed about. You were not. You were angry at her. You said it there that you were angry at her and you wanted to give her a thing or two, and then you ended up being passive aggressive. That's my take. But despite that, I do agree that being nice is better. Like being friendly towards each other. Like there's no need to turn things hostile. But I do see a lot of contradictions in him, or at least things that don't add up to me, to my opinion. But the one thing I gotta give him praise on is that the situation turned out to be positive in the end. So yeah, there's that. Whatever works for you, I guess. Okay, chapter 10. The title of it is An Appeal That Everybody Likes. The fact is that all people that you meet have a high regard for themselves and like to be fine and unselfish in their own estimations. And then he quotes from J.P. Morgan. A person usually has two reasons for doing a thing. One that sounds good and the real one. It's so funny because I actually do agree. I think it's true, at least from a psychology perspective. Here he talks about how to use this to influence people. In order to change people, appeal to their nobler motives, to give them a high estimation of themselves. Okay, and I really enjoyed reading this part of the book, this example he gives. So he knew this landlord, right? And he had a tenant that wanted to move out because they had a little bit of a little beef or whatever. And the tenant was like, I'm leaving. And they still had a lease that they had not finished, they had not concluded. So what the landlord did was he wrote to him a letter. And I'm going to read that letter. What happened? The landlord did not want the other guy to move, but he did not treat him in an aggressive manner, although he wanted to. He did want to, but he chose to appeal to the tenant's nobler motives to have a high estimation of himself. So I'm going to read that letter to you. He said, Mr. Doe, I have listened to your story and I still don't believe you intend to move. Years in the renting business have taught me something about human nature, and I sized you up in the first place as being a man of your word. In fact, I'm so sure that I'm willing to take a gamble. Now here's my proposition. Lay your decision on the table for a few days and think it over. If you come back to me between now and the first of the month, when your rent is due, and tell me you still intend to move, I give you my word that I will accept your decision as final. I will privilege you to move and admit to myself I've been wrong in my judgment. But I still believe you're a man of your word and will live up to your contract. For after all, we are either men or monkeys, and the choice usually lies within ourselves. I started cackling when I read that part. Oh my God, because if the guy ended up moving, he would have taken the insult. He would have been like, yeah, I'm a monkey, I'm out of here. I'll take the L. And what happened was the man was like, oh no, I have a high estimation of myself, and he stayed there. So manipulative. Chapter 11. The title is The Movies Do It, TV Does It. Why don't you do it? What is he talking about? Being dramatic to get your point across. It's so funny because this book was written in the 1930s. He's talking about this is the day and age of dramatization. Merely stating the truth is not enough. And he was referring to the newspapers, like how they're very like clickbaity. That's so funny. And if only he knew, almost a century later, we're still the same. We're still in that day of age. He says, the truth has to be made vivid, interesting, and dramatic. And he goes on to give the examples of TV, right? And how in commercials, they make things dramatic and overly vivid for you. And that's what grasps the consumers. That's what grasps your attention. Man said, clickbait in real life. Well, why is he talking about being dramatic in real life? Okay. He says, sometimes in real life, you need to have some sort of urgency in people to have things happen. You know what I mean? Sometimes if you don't push the importance of whatever it is that you need, people will be like, oh yeah, they'll keep pushing it off. Okay, so yeah, that was the point. Okay, chapter 12 is called When Nothing Else Works, Try This. And this one is not really about personal relationships, but I'll briefly talk about it. It's more so about business practices, okay, when employees are not that like motivated to work. What works? Competition, okay? Like stimulating a fun competition, okay? Let's see who can do better, who can do more. Okay, you're using their desire of importance, their desire to excel and be good. He uses this quote, which I do like. All men have fears, but the brave put down their fears and go forward. Sometimes to death, but always to victory. What greater challenge can be offered than the opportunity to overcome one's fears? And I really like this quote because you can apply it to anything. Okay, you can go through whatever challenge you have, achieve your dreams, overcome your fears. Yes, you got this. Part 3, that was all of it. Woohoo, we're done with part 3. And I will be filming part 4. Let me see how many chapters we have. 9 chapters in part 4. Okay, I do think that's gonna be a little bit easier on me. Just 9 chapters, yay! Okay, and I'm gonna try to do it all in one video, so that we can get to reading more books and more fun. And I'll also be talking about my conclusion, how it is that I feel from reading this book at the end. I have a little bit of mixed feelings, but okay, see you. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you enjoyed it, okay?